Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another watch list. Basically, think of this as a monthly TV guide for me to let you know what and when TV shows that I'm interested in that maybe you're interested in are coming out. Like always, in the description down below, I'll include links to any trailers that may be available about anything that I bring up during this watch list. On June 2nd on AMC, we have this new series coming on called Nosferatu, which is interesting because it confused me at first because of the way it's spelled. It's basically N-O-S, the number 4, the letter A, and the number 2. So it was kind of spelled weird. It took me a while to be like, oh, I think I read somewhere else that explained like, oh, that's how it's pronounced. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's actually based on a novel of the same name, I think, but nevertheless. Basically, it's about this guy who basically steals children's souls, and he goes to like this town called Christmas Land, where he basically kind of like, it's kind of his twisted world that he kind of controls, and basically this woman is kind of finds her way into this world and kind of helps this battle against him. It seems very interesting from like the one trailer I saw of it, so I thought it was kind of interesting, like whether he's supposed to be like Nosferatu himself. I mean, because he has a name, but it isn't necessarily Nosferatu, so I'm wondering, is that just the name they gave to the series? I don't know. It seems very interesting, like, you know, obviously kind of seems like it's kind of a bit of like a horror, definitely has a very horror-esque element. It seems like kind of like a battling the supernatural type of show, so I'm very interested to see, you know, ultimately what it ends up all being about. On July 12th on Sci-Fi, we have season 2 premiering of Krypton, which I'm very excited about. If you haven't seen Krypton, you need to change that. I really like, because the fact is, a show, like, obviously it isn't a prequel, it's got prequel elements to it, but it is its own story, and it's very interesting. Like, you know, obviously, like, someone has come back in time to make it so that Superman's future isn't what it is. They're trying to erase him from history, and this all goes back to his grandfather Seg. It's a whole situation, and so obviously the story takes a lot of turns in season 1, and especially where season 1 ended off. Let's pick the story up there. Dude, there's also going to be, like, obviously I don't want to spoil anything, you haven't seen a trailer, but there's a new character coming to the show. Well, technically two. There was one that was set up last season, but another one that just popped up. I was like, wait, you're in this? Holy crap. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see, you know, what the twists and turns are, because there's a lot of stuff that came up last season of being like, well, is it this person responsible for potentially damaging Superman's history? Like, obviously things have changed. Like I said, I'm not trying to get into spoilers, but the season 1 finale, it's like, oh, this is the new reality that's setting in. So I'm interested to see how that whole situation evolves, because I really appreciate the fact that we're getting to learn more about Krypton. I feel like Krypton's not one of those things that's ever really brought up in a lot of Superman continuity. To be fair, I don't know comic books that well, but a lot of stuff kind of usually slides over because it's never the most important thing. Obviously, usually the focus is Superman, so it's interesting to kind of get that look at Superman being the focus in certain regards, but obviously Krypton itself more so being the focus. You know, so it's kind of interesting. So I'm very excited to see what season 2 ends up being about. And on June 14th on Netflix, we have the 3rd and final season of Jessica Jones premiering. Obviously, that kind of bums me out that this is the final season, but going into this, I already knew that. Obviously, it's sad to know, like, obviously this is going to be the end of all the Marvel stuff on Netflix. This is officially closing that chapter, but still, I'm very excited to see what season 3 has in store, because obviously every season has been a very personal story for Jessica, whether it be, you know, Kilgrave in season 1, season 2, a lot of stuff about her past and her family. I'll leave it at that. But a lot of stuff changed for her in season 2. Like, obviously there was some good, but there was a lot of bad, especially where her and Trish stand, like her and Malcolm, like the two like foundations to like who she is are kind of, those relationships have wavered and changed, so I'm curious to see where they take us in season 3. Also, what about Trish too? Like, obviously there's certain things, well, obviously her character kind of changed in season 2, but there's also another thing that happened that we kind of find out about at the very end of season 2, so I'm curious to see what that all means for her. And obviously, once again, like her relationship with Jessica being a big focus, like where do they go from here? At the point in time of me recording this, the only thing that's come out is a date announcement video, which didn't show too much, but it did kind of have like this nice creepy element of someone being like, oh, Jessica Jones, essentially calling her a liar or something, or a fraud or something like that. So I'm interested to see who the villain is and what everything entails, because there's certain things in season 2 that I'm curious if they're going to circle back to that in season 3 or not. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how they end up wrapping up this series. Also on June 14th on Cinemax, we had this new series called Jett, what seems very interesting. It seems like this woman who's kind of been a career criminal, like she's a thief, and she ended up getting released from jail, but she kind of gets mixed back into the whole situation because like some criminals kind of want to use her because she's very good at what she does. And just from the trailer I saw, it seemed very interesting because obviously the show seems very like kind of action-packed, kind of crime drama-ish. I think that looks pretty neat, but also I like the fact is it almost seems like she's balancing like her thieving life, this whole criminal side of things, with like being a mom. So I'm interested to see what that balance ends up being, but it seems pretty action-packed and pretty interesting. So I'm very interested to see what that is. I've tried to avoid reading too much on what everything is, but it seems very interesting from what I saw from the trailer. On June 16th on CBS, we have season 2 premiering of Instinct. Instinct is basically about, you know, this author as well as, you know, teacher, former CIA operative, Dylan. He's working with the NYPD, in particular detective Lizzie. So obviously season 1 brought up a lot of interesting things that I'm curious to kind of see where they take us in season 2, because a lot of stuff in season 1 kind of got resolved to a certain extent. Obviously, like things with Lizzie and her fiance, that storyline, I kind of get the feeling like maybe we might see more of that potentially set up in season 2. There's also some other elements connected to Lizzie we found out about in season 1. Like I'm curious where they potentially might take us. But I feel like season 2 we might get more into Dylan's past, because obviously his CIA days come up from time to time, and it's not something he really looks back on happily, you know, because obviously he just didn't like the way the CIA kind of operated. So I'm curious to see that kind of circle back around, especially because that kind of goes hand in hand with Dylan's relationship with his dad. Is that gonna be something we see? Because obviously him and, you know, his husband, him and Andy are married, right? If I remember correctly, I think so. They seem like they're in a good place, but I'm curious to see, you know, because obviously Dylan being who he is and just the way his life is can complicate a relationship. We saw bits of that in season 1. I'm curious if we get to see any more of that in season 2. On June 24th on FX, we had the 3rd and final season of Legion premiering. Obviously going into this, once again, I knew about it going into its final season, and I'm very excited because this is one of those things where it seems like, no, they went into this knowing like, oh, this is definitely going to be the final season, always planned for 3 seasons potentially. So obviously it's going to be interesting just based on a trailer, like without giving too much away, the way season 2 ended, the shift that the story took on David as the main character, in the sense of like where he stands in the grand scheme of everything, I think is very interesting. Like I feel like not many shows shift their hero like this show did, so I'm interested to see what that means for him. I mean, obviously like all the relationships he's built up to this point in time, the dynamic has changed very heavily. We'll just kind of leave it at that without going into spoilers. So, but obviously, like just from what I saw from the trailer, it seemed like there might be a time travel aspect to this, like how big, how important that is going to be to the story. It's going to be very interesting to find out. But I'm curious to see how they ultimately end up wrapping up Legion. And finally, on June 30th on Starz, we had this new miniseries premiering called The Rook. Now, it seems very interesting. Basically, it's this lady who wakes up, it's like, oh, she has no memory of things, and she watches a videotape of herself being like, oh, like, the fact is that, you know, something might have happened to me if you're watching this. And so it basically seems like she's a part of, from what I was reading, it seems like she's part of some organization in the government that deals with the supernatural. And it seems like she, as well as other people part of this group, potentially seem like they have supernatural abilities too. So it seems like it's definitely got like this like mystery element to obviously figuring out like who did this to her and why, as well as what this organization is about and stuff. It turns out what I was reading, it seems like this is actually based on a book of the same name as well. So I'm very interested to see what that ends up being about, because like it's still not a clear-cut picture of just like everything that you could see in the show, but I'm very interested, you know, just from the little bit we gotten of it, to see, you know, what it's ultimately about. And that brings this month's watch list to an end. Like always, if there's something coming out that you're aware of that maybe I wasn't aware of, that you think maybe me or someone else might be interested in, don't be afraid to leave it in the comments down below. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good